Things cannot continue this way. We need to make a decision as a family.
It was 3 a.m. on July 10th, 2023, when a phone rang in Jos, Plateau State. A brother picked up. The voice on the other end belonged to his sister's husband. The message was short. She was struggling to breathe. Come to Abuja. Then the line went dead. No explanation, no details, just silence. By the time Obioma Okeke made that journey from Jos to Abuja, the biggest shock of his life was waiting for him. His sister, Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu, a trained optometrist, a mother of 5 children, a woman who had just secured a new job in the nation's capital, was already dead. But here is what makes this story different from every other tragic headline you have scrolled past. This did not happen suddenly. This had been building for years. The signs were there, the violence was there, and the people around this marriage knew it. Today, we are going to take you through every detail of what happened to Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu, from the life she built, to the marriage that quietly destroyed it, to the night her husband drove back to Abuja in the dark, while her family believed he was still in Jos. Before we go any further, if you are new to this channel, now is the time to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss a documentary like this one. And if you are already a subscriber, welcome back. Get comfortable, settle in. This is a story that deserves your full attention, and we always love to know who is watching from where. Drop your country in the comments right now. Tell us where you are watching from tonight. Now let us begin. There is a tendency when a woman is murdered for the story to become entirely about the man who killed her. Her name becomes a headline, her face becomes a photograph, and the fullness of who she was gets buried beneath the details of how she died. We are not going to do that here. Before we talk about what happened to Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu, we are going to talk about who she was. Because this woman was not just a victim. She was a professional. She was a daughter. She was a sister. She was a mother. And she had spent her entire adult life working hard to build something real. Ogechi was 40 years old at the time of her death. She trained as an optometrist, a specialist in eye care, and earned her degree from Imo State University. For anyone who understands what it takes to complete a medical degree in Nigeria, to sit through the years of training, the examinations, the clinical work, you understand that this was not a woman who took shortcuts. This was a woman who put in the work. She had recently secured a new job in Abuja, the nation's capital. That alone tells you something about where she was headed. She was building. She was growing. At 40 years old, with 5 children and a 12-year marriage behind her, Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu was still pushing forward professionally. Her colleagues at the Nigerian Optometric Association knew her. They worked alongside her. And when the news broke of her death, the shock inside that professional community was immediate and devastating. These were people who had sat in the same conference rooms with her, people who had shared the same professional struggles, and now they were writing public statements demanding justice for her murder. That is the kind of woman Ogechi was, the kind whose absence is felt, the kind whose colleagues do not simply mourn and move on, the kind who, even in death, refuses to be forgotten. She left behind 5 children, 3 boys, 2 girls. The youngest of those children will grow up without their mother because of what happened in that house in Buari on the night of July 10th, 2023. Remember her name, Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu. Say it again if you have to, because this story belongs to her. John Ezeagu was 49 years old, 9 years older than his wife. A trader who dealt in floor tiles and building materials, operating out of their home in Buari Area Council on the outskirts of Abuja. He was originally from Amanduba Amako Umuaka in Olu, Njaba local government area of Imo State, the same state where Ogechi had gone to university. 2 people from the same part of Nigeria who had found each other, built a home together, and brought 5 children into the world. From the outside, the Ezeagu family looked like many Nigerian families trying to make something of themselves in the capital: a doctor wife, a businessman husband, a house in Buari, 5 children. But outside appearances and inside realities are 2 very different things. John Ezeagu was not a man content to share a home in peace. According to family sources, the marriage had been troubled for a long time. There were complaints, there was tension, and there was violence, not once, not twice, but repeatedly, over a period of years. What we know about John from the accounts surrounding his wife's death is telling. On the day before Ogechi was killed, he drove all the way from Abuja to Jos, not to reconcile, not to seek peace. He went to our family's house to register his complaints, his displeasure, his grievances about how Ogechi had been behaving lately. And what was his primary complaint? That she no longer respected him. Those 4 words. She no longer respected him. That was what John Ezeagu carried from Abuja to Jos on July 9th, 2023. Not concern for the marriage, not love for his wife, a wounded sense of authority over a woman who had spent 12 years building a life while he watched. When the family meeting in Jos did not go the way he wanted, he walked out, angry, without resolution, and without anyone suspecting what he was about to do next. The man Ogechi married was capable of holding a grudge across state lines, capable of acting on it in the darkest hours of the night, and capable, as we will see, of picking up a phone at 3 a.m. and delivering the news of his wife's death as calmly as if he were reading a weather report. That was the man behind the title of husband. There is a phrase Nigerians know well. What happens in the home stays in the home. It is not a law. It is not written anywhere. But it governs more marriages in this country than any legislation ever has. And it is a phrase that has cost women their lives. In the Ezeagu household in Buari, things had been happening behind closed doors for a long time. Family sources who spoke to investigators and journalists in the weeks following Ogechi's death were clear on one point. What happened on the night of July 10th, 2023 was not an isolated incident. It was the climax, the final act of a pattern of violence that had been playing out inside that marriage for years. The word climax is important. It means there was a beginning, there was a middle, and there was an end. The end came at 3 a.m. on a Monday morning in Buari. But the beginning came long before that night. Neighbors in the Buari community had heard things, seen things, the kind of things that neighbors in Nigerian compounds always see and hear, but rarely speak about openly until it is too late. Raised voices, tension, a marriage visibly under strain. Ogechi herself had spoken to at least one person close to her about her plans. Not her fears, her plans. She had approached her neighbor, Mrs. Grace Adebowo, about finding a good building contractor. She told her she needed someone to help construct a building. She was planning ahead. She was thinking about the future. That is the detail that stays with you. A woman living inside a violent marriage was still making plans, still thinking about tomorrow, still trying to build something for herself and her children, even while enduring what she endured at home. Women in abusive marriages do not stop living. They do not stop dreaming. They find corners of their life where they can breathe. Ogechi found hers in her career, in her children, in the quiet plans she made with neighbors on ordinary afternoons. But behind those plans was a reality she could not fully escape. A husband whose anger followed her from Abuja to Jos and back again. A home where peace was never guaranteed. A marriage that had quietly become a place of danger. The door to that home closed every night, and whatever happened behind it, Ogechi faced largely alone. If you knew what to look for, the signs were there. That is the hardest truth about domestic violence. It rarely arrives without warning. It builds, it escalates, it follows a pattern so consistent that researchers, psychologists, and law enforcement officers around the world have documented it in detail. And yet, again and again, the warning signs go unread until it is too late. In the Ezeagu marriage, the signs were present. The first sign was control. John Ezeagu traveled from Abuja to Jos to complain to his wife's family that she no longer respected him. Think carefully about what that means. A grown man, 49 years old, drove across state lines because his wife, a professional woman with a career and 5 children, was not conducting herself in a manner that satisfied his sense of authority. That is not a marital complaint. That is a man who believed he had the right to control his wife's behavior and was furious that control was slipping. The second sign was isolation. When John was detained at the police station following Ogechi's death, he refused to reveal where the 5 children were. 5 children. He used those children as leverage even in the hours after their mother had been killed. The ability to withhold access to children is one of the most documented tools of control in abusive relationships. The third sign was the pattern of violence itself. Multiple family sources confirmed that what happened on July 10th was not the first time violence had entered that marriage. It was simply the time it went too far. In abusive relationships, violence escalates over time. What begins as shouting becomes pushing. What begins as pushing becomes hitting, and without intervention, it continues to climb. The fourth sign was the public complaint. When John arrived in Jos on July 9th, he did not come quietly. He came to make a case against his wife in front of her own family. Abusers often seek validation from those around them. They build a narrative in which they are the wrong party. They plant seeds of doubt. They make sure that when something eventually happens, people will remember that they raised concerns. John Ezeagu ticked every one of these signs. The tragedy of Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu is not simply that she was killed. It is that the road to her death was paved with warning signs that our society has not yet learned to read in time. On Sunday, July 9, 2023, John Ezeagu got into his car in Buari, Abuja, and drove north to Jos, Plateau State. He called ahead to Ogechi's family. He told them he was coming. He told them there were issues in the marriage that were bothering him, issues he needed to discuss with them directly. That in itself was unusual. Husbands who are at peace in their marriages do not typically drive to their in-laws to lodge formal complaints about their wives. When John arrived at the family house in Jos, Ogechi arrived shortly after. The two of them, husband and wife, now sitting in the presence of her family, with whatever had been building between them about to come into the open. John spoke. He told the family that Ogechi had not been behaving well lately, that she no longer respected him, that there were things about her conduct that he found unacceptable. He presented himself as a man wronged, a husband at the end of his patience. What he did not present was any willingness to listen, any openness to resolution, any genuine desire to fix what was broken. Before the conversation could reach any conclusion, John stood up. He announced he was leaving to see some friends in Jos. He walked out of that family house while the discussion was still unfinished. While Ogechi was still sitting there, her family watched him go. They had no reason to be alarmed. He had come in his car. He was in Jos. Ogechi was with them. Whatever tension existed in that marriage, it would have to wait until they both returned to Abuja. That was what they believed. What they did not know was that John Ezeagu had already made a decision. He did not go to see any friends. He did not stay in Jos. He left the city quietly, without the car he had driven up in, and began making his way back to Abuja. He left his wife safe in Jos with her family, and he went back to wait for her in the home they shared. The family in Jos went to sleep that night, believing the storm had passed. They did not know that it had only just begun. This is the chapter that separates accident from intent. Because what John Ezeagu did after he walked out of that family house in Jos was not impulsive. It was not the action of a man swept up in the heat of the moment. It was calculated, it was deliberate, and it was carried out with the kind of cold precision that tells you everything you need to know about the state of mind behind it. He left Jos without his car. Read that again. He left the city without the car he had driven from Abuja. That single detail dismantles any argument that what happened later was unplanned. A man who intends to return home in anger takes his car. A man who does not want to be tracked, who does not want anyone to know he has left, who wants the people behind him to believe he is still in Jos, finds another way. John Ezeagu found another way. While Ogechi's family settled in for the night, believing the Jos trip had ended in an unresolved argument and nothing more, her husband was already on the road back to Abuja, moving quietly, moving deliberately, going back to the home that Ogechi would eventually return to. His family in Jos confirmed it later. Nobody suspected he had gone back. Nobody saw him leave in any visible way. He simply disappeared from Jos, and no one thought to question it because he had already told them he was going to see friends. One lie, casually delivered, and it bought him all the time he needed. When Ogechi eventually returned to Buari from Jos, John was already there, waiting. Whatever happened in that house in the hours that followed, only John Ezeagu knows the full details. But the autopsy results, the testimonies of family members, and the medical findings at Federal Medical Center Jabi would later paint a picture clear enough for a court to examine. The quiet drive back to Abuja was not the action of a man trying to save his marriage. It was the action of a man who had already decided how the night was going to end. At approximately 3 a.m. on July 10, 2023, a phone rang in Jos. Obioma Okeke, Ogechi's brother, picked up. The caller was John Ezeagu. The message was brief. Ogechi was having difficulty breathing. Come to Abuja. Then the call ended. No detail, no explanation, no answer to the questions Obioma fired back before the line went dead. Just a flat instruction to come, delivered in the early hours of a Monday morning, from a man who had supposedly been in just hours earlier seeing friends. Obioma later described the moment in the family petition to the Inspector General of Police. He said the call came as a big shock. He said he asked John several questions about what was wrong with his sister. He said John ended the call abruptly without answering any of them. Think about what you would feel in that moment. Your sister, who was healthy when you last saw her, who showed no trace of illness when she visited your parents the day before, who was sitting with the family in Jos just hours ago, and now her husband is calling at 3 a.m. to say she cannot breathe. Obioma did not wait. He made the journey from Jos to Abuja as fast as he could. What he found when he arrived was not a woman recovering in a hospital bed. It was not a medical emergency that had been stabilized. When Obioma reached Federal Medical Center Jabi in Abuja, the doctors had already certified his sister dead. Ogechi Ezeagu was gone, and her husband, the man who had made that 3 a.m. phone call, the man who had driven back to Abuja in secret while her family slept in Jos, was there, calm, offering no explanation, claiming he knew nothing about what had happened to his wife. The phone call at 3 a.m. was not an act of panic. It was the final move in a sequence of decisions that began when John walked out of that family house in Jos the evening before. By the time help could arrive, there was no one left to help. Federal Medical Center, Jabi, Abuja, the early hours of July 10, 2023. When Obioma Okeke arrived and found his sister certified dead, his first move was not to grieve. It was to act. He insisted on an autopsy. As a family, they needed to know what had killed Ogechi, because nothing about this situation made sense. A woman who was healthy the day before, a husband who offered no explanation, a death in the middle of the night with no medical history to account for it. From FMC Jabi, Obioma moved to Buari Police Divisional Headquarters and filed a formal complaint. John Ezeagu was invited to the station. He came, he was detained, and from the moment he sat across from those officers, he maintained one position without wavering. He knew nothing about his wife's death. He had no information. He could not explain what had happened. But what John did inside that police station told its own story. When the family asked about the 5 children, he refused to answer. 5 children, the youngest among them not yet grown, and their father sat in a police station and would not say where they were, would not give the family any information about their whereabouts. That is not the behavior of a grieving husband. That is the behavior of a man using every available tool to maintain control of a situation that was rapidly closing in on him. Meanwhile, the family pushed for the autopsy to proceed. The hospital at FMC Jabi could not perform it immediately because their mortuary refrigeration was not functioning properly. The family was referred to the National Hospital Abuja. Before the full autopsy was completed, the examining doctor examined Ogechi's body and shared preliminary findings with the family. What the doctor described was not a medical emergency. What the doctor described was evidence of beatings and evidence of strangulation on the body of a 40-year-old woman who had been healthy just one day before. The hospital had told the family what the autopsy would later confirm. John Ezeagu sat in that police station and said he knew nothing. The body of his wife said otherwise. Before the truth about how Ogechi Ezeagu died could be established, her family had to fight for the right to find it, and that fight began the moment they requested an autopsy. John Ezeagu's family moved quickly to oppose it. Their position was clear: there should be no autopsy. Arrangements should be made for burial. The body should be released. The matter should be closed. Think carefully about what that demand represents. A woman is dead under suspicious circumstances in the middle of the night. Her husband cannot explain what happened. Her body shows physical signs of trauma, and the husband's family is asking the bereaved to skip the medical examination and proceed directly to burial. In Nigeria, that pressure is not unusual. It is, in fact, one of the most common ways that evidence in domestic violence deaths gets buried alongside the victim. Families are pressured. Cultural obligations are invoked. The urgency of burial traditions is weaponized to prevent autopsies that would tell the truth. Ogechi's family refused. Obioma Okeke and the family held their ground against that pressure. They insisted the autopsy would be done, but obstacles kept appearing. FMC Jabi could not complete it due to the state of their mortuary facilities. The family was redirected to the National Hospital Abuja. The FCT police spokesperson, Josephine Ade, was contacted. She applied pressure on the Buhari police to extend full cooperation to the family and facilitate the process. That intervention mattered. Without it, the bureaucratic delays could have given the opposing pressure more time to succeed. Eventually, the autopsy was completed at the National Hospital Abuja. The results were released and read to family members. The finding was unambiguous. Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu died of asphyxiation due to strangulation, not a sudden illness, not a breathing episode, not a medical condition that explained a 3 a.m. phone call from a husband who claimed to know nothing. Strangulation. The family had refused to back down. They had fought through the pressure, through the bureaucracy, through the opposition of a family that did not want the truth to come out. And the truth came out anyway. With the autopsy result in hand, Ogechi's family did not go quiet. Obioma Okeke, her brother, sat down and put everything on paper, every detail. The phone call at 3 a.m., the journey to Abuja, the hospital, the detention, the refusal to disclose the children's whereabouts, the opposition to the autopsy, the result that confirmed strangulation. All of it went into a formal petition addressed to the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun. The petition was not a private letter. It was made available to journalists. It was read by newsrooms across the country. It appeared in Tribune Online, The Sun, Leadership, Daily Trust, The Cable, The Guardian, and Punch. Every major Nigerian newspaper carried the family's account. Obioma's words in that petition were precise and deliberate. He quoted the time of the call. He quoted what John said. He quoted what John refused to say. He documented the sequence of events from the moment he received that call in Jos to the moment the autopsy confirmed his fears. He demanded justice not with emotion alone, but with evidence. At the same time, the Nigerian Optometrist Association entered the public conversation. NOA President Dr. Anderson Chimeziri issued a formal statement condemning the murder. He called on the FCT authorities and the Inspector General of Police to act. He called on the National Assembly, the National Human Rights Commission, the Ministry of Women Affairs, civil society groups, non-governmental organizations. He named every institution that carried responsibility and told them plainly that this case would not be allowed to disappear. The association announced it was collaborating with women optometrists in Nigeria to provide legal protection for female members. It set up a dedicated committee on women's affairs to work with gender-based activists going forward. Dr. Chimeziri ended his statement with 3 words that became the headline across multiple outlets: "Enough is enough." For Obioma Okeke and the family of Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu, the petition was an act of love, a refusal to let a system that is very good at losing cases involving dead women lose this one without a fight. The family had their result. Now they needed their justice. Nigeria has laws against domestic violence. The Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, known as VAPP, was signed into law in 2015. It criminalizes physical, sexual, psychological, and economic abuse within relationships. It provides for protection orders. It mandates prosecution. On paper, it is one of the most comprehensive domestic violence laws on the African continent. On paper. The reality that women like Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu face is different. Domestic violence cases in Nigeria are routinely settled outside court. Families mediate, pastors and imams intervene, elders are consulted. The woman is encouraged to return to the home, to forgive, to keep the family together, and the cycle continues until it cannot continue anymore. John Ezeagu was detained at Wari Police Division following his wife's death. He was held while the family pursued the autopsy. The case was active. But detention is not conviction. Arrest is not justice. And in a country where court dockets are overloaded, witnesses disappear, and cases involving domestic violence are quietly reclassified or delayed into irrelevance, the distance between an arrest and a conviction is vast. The 5 children Ogechi left behind are growing up somewhere right now. Their mother is gone. Their father is the man accused of killing her. What becomes of them? Who cares for them? How they are raised in the shadow of this tragedy are questions the system has not loudly answered. The NOA demanded prosecution. The family petitioned the Inspector General. Journalists covered the story. And then, as happens with so many cases in Nigeria, the noise gradually faded. The headlines moved on to the next tragedy, the next woman, the next family demanding justice through the pages of a newspaper because there was nowhere else to take their grief. That silence after the noise is not neutral. It is a statement. It tells every woman living in a violent home exactly how much the system values her safety. It tells every abuser exactly how much risk he is taking. Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu deserved better than silence. Her children deserve better than silence. And the women who are still alive in marriages just like hers deserve a system that acts before it is too late. Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu was 40 years old. She had a degree, a career, 5 children who needed her, a new job she had just secured in Abuja, a neighbor she had spoken to about building contractors because she was planning ahead, because she was still thinking about the future even while living inside a marriage that had become a danger to her life. She did not die because she was weak. She did not die because she failed to protect herself. She died because a man who was supposed to be her partner chose violence over and over again, and the world around her did not intervene in time. That is the truth we have to sit with. Domestic violence does not announce itself. It does not arrive with a warning label. It builds slowly inside homes that look ordinary from the outside. It hides behind closed doors and cultural silence. And the deeply held belief that what happens between a husband and wife is nobody else's business, but it is everybody's business. Because women are dying. Because 5 children in Abuja are growing up without their mother. Because a professional association had to issue a public statement demanding that the police investigate the murder of one of their members by her own husband. If you are watching this and you recognize the warning signs in your own life or in the life of someone you love, do not wait for a 3 a.m. phone call to force you to act. Control is a warning sign. Isolation is a warning sign. A partner who monitors your finances, questions your movements, erodes your confidence, or turns your own family against you is showing you exactly who they are. Believe them. If you are in Nigeria, the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons helpline is available. Domestic violence support organizations including Project Alert and WARIF operate across the country. Reach out. Tell someone. Do not carry it alone. The Nigerian Optometric Association stood up for Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu. Her brother Obioma stood up for her. This documentary stands up for her. Her name was Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu. She was an optometrist. She was a mother. She was a daughter. She was a sister. And she deserved to live. If this documentary moved you, please share it. Leave a comment. Tell us where you are watching from. And if you have not yet subscribed, do it now so that stories like this one keep reaching the people who need to hear them. We will keep telling these stories, because silence has already cost too many women their lives. Rest in peace, Dr. Ogechi Ezeagu.